Well, hello. It's time for Wednesday Bible study, and today it's just me. And that's because Pastor Dave is off working on his sermon for Sunday and doing some writing and study. So today we together, you and I, will look through this text. So we've been in this series called Follow at Maitland Presbyterian Church, which we're looking what it means to follow Jesus. Now, you might be thinking, well, I've been a Christian a long time, but there's actually some nuance to what does it mean to follow Jesus versus what does it mean just to go to church or call yourself a Christian. That following Jesus is really changes your whole life. So whether you've been a Christian for a really long time or whether you're not a Christian at all, we're hoping there's something in this conversation for everybody. So we're going to take a look today at the Gospel of Mark. So we have 4 Gospels in the Bible: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And Mark is the shortest and the most succinct. Like, he gets right to the point. So today we're going to be reading from the Gospel of Mark, chapter 8, and we're going to pick up in verse 27. So Mark, chapter 8, verse 27. Let's take a look. It says, Jesus went on with his disciples to the villages of Caesarea Philippi, and on the way he asked his disciples, "Who do you say that I am?" Now, whenever Jesus asks a question, you have to really wonder what he's up to, because it's never just straightforward, right? So let's take a look. And they answered him, "John the Baptist, others Elijah, still others one of the prophets." So we know there's a lot of conversation in Jesus's community to say, who is this man that's come to us? Let's keep going. He asked them, "But who do you say that I am?" Who do you say that I am? And now at this point, you can feel the disciples, like there's a lot at stake for them in this question, I think, don't you? All right, let's keep looking. Peter answered, "You are the Messiah." And he sternly ordered them not to tell anyone about him. There's a lot of writing about this messianic secret of why Jesus keeps saying, don't tell anybody. Probably more than we can get into today, but it's strange, isn't it? When we hear that, why would Jesus say, don't tell anyone? So we'll come back to that another time. Verse 31. Then Jesus began to teach that the Son of Man must undergo great suffering and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, and the scribes, and be killed, and after 3 days rise again. And I love this. Look, verse 32. He said all this quite openly. So Jesus is not making a secret of what the plan is for his life. He knows. And he's really starting to talk about it a lot, which I think makes the disciples really uncomfortable. They're like, surely not. Which makes sense, right? If you're following someone and you really love them and you've put your whole life on hold, and now this person that you believe in, that you believe is the Son of God, is telling you, look, a part of the plan here is I'm going to have to die to rise again. The disciples don't want to believe it. Let's look. Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. But turning and looking at his disciples, he rebuked Peter. Now, so we have a feeling, we don't know for sure what Peter says, at least in Mark, it doesn't tell us. But we can kind of imagine Peter being like, look, cut it out about the dying stuff. Like, we don't want you to die. We don't want that to happen. We want everything to be good. We want things to be easy. We want stuff to work out. We want this like happily ever after all the time. And so Peter pulls him aside to be like, hey, you should probably cut that out. And Jesus is like, actually, you should cut it out. And then he brings all the disciples together and says to them, he pulls all the disciples together. He rebukes Peter and says, "Get behind me, Satan, for you are setting your mind not on divine things, but on human things." Get behind me, Satan. That's a really strong word from Jesus to Peter. And I don't think that Jesus is necessarily saying Peter is Satan, like he believes he's like this incarnate evil. But I think it is Jesus's way of saying, look, if you're not working with me towards what God is doing here, you need to get out of the way. Like, if you're not going to get in line and move in the direction that God is calling us to go, you need to step aside because you are getting in the way of what God's doing here. So he says, get behind me, Satan. You are setting your mind not on divine things, but on human things. Whew. That's us, guys. That's us all the time. Like, it's so easy for us to focus on the stuff we see as human, like Peter and the disciples, who routinely are like, I don't understand, Jesus. Here's what I'm seeing. And so you're focusing on human things, not on divine things. what God sees, what God plans, what God intends, which takes a lot of trust. Peter and the disciples, they don't know the end of the story yet. They know what Jesus has told them, but they don't have the Gospels. So they'd much rather Jesus just stay alive. But Jesus is saying, nope, that's not the plan. Verse 34, he called the crowd with his disciples. So first it was Peter, then he calls the disciples. Now he calls this whole crowd around him. And he said to them, if any want to become my followers, so not just the disciples anymore, if any want to follow me, here's what you need to do. And everyone says, what? What do we need to do to follow you? He says, let them deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. Now, this take up the cross phrase is something is really easy to misuse as Christians. People use it a lot to refer to things that aren't such a big deal, like, oh, it's my cross to bear. I got to take up the cross and sit in traffic. Like, no, it's not what Jesus is talking about. Oh, I got to take up the cross and, be on this committee. No. Jesus is saying you have to deny all of it, right? Like all that human stuff, all those plans you thought you had, all those things that have a grip on your life, you have to put those down to take up the cross and to follow Jesus. And again, keep in mind the context when he says, follow me, he just told them where he was going. Like he just told them he's going to the cross. He just told them the way to follow him is to follow him all the way to his death. So this isn't something Jesus says lightly when he said, you got to set aside all that stuff you think matters and focus on where I'm going and what that's going to mean. All right, for those who want to save their life will lose it. And those who lose their life for my sake and the sake of the gospel will save it. Now again, we have to be careful with these verses. Jesus is not saying we go out and martyr ourselves just because. He's not saying that you have to actually physically die to follow Jesus. He is saying you're going to have to set aside all that life stuff that we get so focused on to really have our lives matter the way that we're looking for them to matter. So when we think, gosh, I just want purpose in my life, or I just want meaning, I just want to feel like I'm here for a reason, to do that, we have to follow God. And to follow Jesus, we're going to have to set aside some things that maybe we've put in that place. There's all sorts of things. We'll talk more about that on Sunday. Let's keep going. For what will it profit them to gain the whole world and forfeit their life? What will it gain them? You can have everything and still have nothing, right? Indeed, who can they give in return for their life? Those who are ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation. Of them, the Son of Man, that's Jesus, will also be ashamed when he comes in the glory of his Father with the holy angels. Okay, so as we follow Jesus, there's a cost. There's stuff that we have to be willing to give up. So we tend to talk about all the benefits of following Jesus, and those are very real. We have this new life, and we have redemption, and we have salvation, and it makes our lives more intact. Not always easier, but it makes our relationships make more sense, and it makes the world, like we can kind of start to put pieces together to get through the day. But there is a cost to following Jesus too, those things that he might ask you to set aside. So those are the kind of things we're going to be looking at Sunday. Dave will be preaching on Sunday and looking at what is the cost of following Jesus. What's that fine print of what it means to really follow Jesus, and what might that cost be in your life? What does it mean when Jesus says to you, you have to deny yourself, take up your cross, and follow me? What's that mean? So that's what we'll be looking at on Sunday. So again, if you want to prepare for Sunday, you can look at the Gospel of Mark, chapter 8, 27 through 38, and we look forward to following Jesus together more on Sunday. Thanks for coming to Bible study, guys. Bye.